Hello and welcome to Chatbox with Sam. Today's guest is Jack Maxwell. So Jack, today I've got a few questions to ask as I'm trying to find the similarities in us as human beings and our unique differences. So I'm very honoured that you come on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
And I figured you probably had a few questions when you said you wanted to interview me. So I'm in the right headspace for a bunch of questions, actually.
You are, get ready to go.
Uh-oh.
Let's
What,
do
careful what you ask for, right?
Absolutely. If you were to encourage the younger generation, what would that be and why?
Oh, wow, I never really thought of that because I don't feel that just because I'm on television occasionally or in films, that and maybe have a bit of a tiny little voice on social media or wherever, that I should tell that I'm so smart that I could leave behind philosophical gems for people to follow. I think, which is really important, it's it's great to acknowledge that too many people are out there, especially on social media, telling other people how to live, and think this way, think that way. We're more divided, uh, so much more than we've ever been. That's why I love how you approach it, that we find the similarities, not the differences, because we can't find them. There are so many there if that's what we want to look for. But if we want to look for the differences, if we want to find a reason to call them the other, then we can find the hate if we want to live in that. But why? But to try to answer your question, I would say be nice to each other. Really, you can choose that if you want to, and there's no reason not to, because one of the great lessons I learned about going around the world doing Booze Traveller, like I did, and I was so honored to be able to do so, is if you give someone an opportunity to be kind, to be nice, if you approach them with an open hand, so to speak, and an open heart, they'll generally open up. Sometimes they need that bit of permission. Sometimes if you give them a smile or put out your hand or a kind of, or talk about something that you might have in common, it just opens them up. They could be shy. That doesn't mean they're not nice. They could just be uncomfortable talking to people in a social setting. So if you make that first move, that approach, and you do it honestly and sincerely, it's just a whole different world. And I think so. If I would say one thing to this generation up and coming, be kind. I guess take care of each other and take care of the earth. You're gonna need it to live on, unless there's some new technology that zooms us off somewhere else. And as you know, what's going on, the earth is on fire, literally in
Right.
so many places. So take care of yourself and take care of this precious place we call home.
Yeah, climate change. That's an amazing answer. What inspired you, Jack, into this career? What was the key point which made you decide, hey, I want to be an actor?
I think that's probably a team of psychologists probably couldn't figure that one out. I think early on it was for escapism. Growing up in the projects without a father, without an older brother, uh, I probably wished for things I didn't have, and for the
Mm,
comforts of what I saw in what's called a traditional nuclear family. I mean, I had friends in the neighborhood, but we had it rough there. I mean, the D Street projects in South Boston in the 60s and 70s. And so you find ways to cope, to adapt.
mhm.
There's a lot of fighting, both literal fist fighting and just yelling and screaming at each other because of the horrid conditions in which people grow up. It's very poor and poverty stricken place.
Mm,
So I probably watched a lot of TV and I was inspired by things, but not just things a kid would watch,
right.
like Batman and Robin. I watched that all the time, and Wild Wild West, escapism stuff. But also, I remember as a little kid seeing a TV series called QB7, which stands for Queen's Bench Seven. It was Anthony Hopkins and Ben Gazzara, and I was fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And so I just mixed them all together. And once my mother told me, "Well, those aren't real people; they're actors." And and I was starting to understand that. I remember, and I've told the story before, but it just strikes me as so funny. Something a little kid would say when she told me, Batman and Robin aren't real. they're other people, you know.
Oh,
And I said, yeah, I know it's Bruce Wayne and whatever Robinson and Bert Grace or whatever,
yeah.
and Dick Grayson. And she goes, no, they're not even those people. They're actors playing those. Adam West is the guy's name who plays Bruce Wayne and Batman. And Burt Ward is the guy who plays Dick Grayson and Robin. I couldn't get my head around it. But once I did, I thought, I want to do that because
Oh,
it feels like fun. And as a kid, fun is the best thing to have. Also
really.
as an adult, by the way. Also as an adult. But it felt like that'd be a good thing to bring joy to people because I had so little of it as a kid because of the circumstances and all. So I guess for those two reasons, I started to do it. Took me a long time though to
Mm.
gain the confidence to even try it because I was told I couldn't do it. I remember going out very specifically. It's funny, some of the benchmark moments in your life that just get imprinted, that stay there forever, no matter what. You know, I
Yeah.
was playing street hockey outside as we did so often. Spring, summer, fall, winter, it didn't matter. Street hockey was the thing. Occasionally stickball, but it was always street hockey in the Boston Bruins and Bobby Orr. And I remember asking one of the older kids, you know, what is an actor? How do you become an actor? Because that's where you got your, I guess, where you'd go for your advice and counsel is to the neighborhood. My mother was
Right.
a young, you know, woman trying to raise a couple of kids,
Oh,
and she didn't have a lot of the street answers that I guess a kid would be looking for, or the male perspective or point of view. Although she was
right.
wonderful and did her best, she was mother and father and all of that stuff, and
Oh,
I appreciate that so much, and I'll love her forever. She's a saint on earth. But it
oh,
doesn't mean as a kid you can get all your answers from that particular source. Sometimes
right.
you can't even from your mother and your father. So you have brothers and sisters. And I had a younger sister, so she was no help. So I
That's
asked this
awesome.
kid how to be an actor, and he looks at me so strange, like I had three heads, and said, "What are you, a sissy or something? What do you want to do, ballet? Be a be a be a hockey player. You're pretty good in hockey. Play for the Bruins or the Red Sox. What do you want to be one of those for?" And it
Oh,
shocked me into thinking under this peer pressure at 7 or 8 years old that
hmm.
yeah, I don't want to do that. And then I would keep bubbling up because it had to, of course.
Yeah.
And at different points, I was shot down, saying I wasn't good enough. And then as I got older, oh, you're starting too late. You didn't go to Tisch or Juilliard, or what are you doing? And you only have a nominal amount of talent, if that. You'll never be a successful actor. But I just couldn't deny it. And I think that's when you're really happiest in life, when you don't deny your true destiny or your path. At least I'm
Mm.
not sure I believe in destiny per se, but there's a path that your whole essence of being says to follow because you're curious what might be down that road. You want to pursue it because that's the thing that fulfills you, that hole in your soul that most of us have that
Oh,
fills it. And so you do it because you have to. and
right.
and so it's almost becomes an inevitability, not a predictability, of course, because we don't know what will happen, but the inevitability of everything in you that drives in a certain direction. So I could ignore it no more. In other words, so I finally started doing it.
You followed your instincts and then you did the hashtag never give up. So that was awesome that you did that because I think that a lot of the times that people don't pursue their dreams because they don't have the courage to do so.
Well, it's hard. You get knocked down a lot, and
Yes,
you believe the bad things everybody
get back
says,
up.
not just about you, but about the possibilities and the odds and everything else. Um, and at some point, sure, call me a dreamer, or say that I walk around with rose-colored glasses, whatever the cliches are.
Yes.
But you have to do it because it's the not knowing
Mm.
that bothers you. If I sat behind my whole life and said, what if I had done that? If I do it and fail, great. I learned that at least I pursued it because that's the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the trying, the doing of it, not whether you become successful or not. A lot of that is luck, to be honest. Not all of it, but a lot of it certainly is right place, right time, all of that, who you know, and everything, of course. And the very talented people have a better chance to get there.
Hmm.
And I didn't have that formal training. So sure, all the odds were against me. They still are. And as most of your people who are watching this say, who is that guy? So I'm not famous by any means, nor did I ever want to be. But just to be able to wake up every day and say I'm an actor, I'm a host. This is what I want to do is enough for me, whether I quote make it or not.
Yeah, and you're Jack Maxwell, and that's who you are, and you're
That's right.
making a difference.
As Oscar Wilde once said, "Be yourself. Everybody else is
Everybody else
already taken."
Perfect. I love that. I just sent that to someone actually, that quote, and I was going to say Samuel Beckett: "Fail again, fail better."
Ah,
Just
there you go. That's
don't
right.
give up. Yeah.
Good old Samuel Beckett.
Right. I like that. So that's great. So, talking about that, is there any role that you've played? Because I know you were talking about your mother and how they're not real people and they're different people, and she was trying to explain that. Is there any role that you've played where you've seen your own persona, and have you portrayed your personality into that role?
Yeah, I think that's probably well, there's a lot of different ways to look at this. I suppose I was just not too long ago. An actor was a friend of mine who's an actor told me that he got a role that was right in his quote wheelhouse, and that he could do it in his sleep because it was so close to him, and the writer didn't know him. Of course, he really fit that, so it was easy for him to play that.
Right.
Still a challenge because it's someone else's words, and you have to interact with other characters that aren't truly in your life, I suppose. But he felt the comfort in that. And I suppose there is. I like doing all kinds of things. It's always fun to play the villain, in other words. Not just, you never want to get typecast, but you're lucky to be cast at all. So, hey, typecasting is better than being not cast, I suppose. Right. But yeah, there've been similar roles, I guess, to me. Or I could count more on my experience and history and natural being, I suppose, to put into that. And other times you have to put away as much as you can to play it honestly. I mean, I did this thing on Lost where I had to have a Scottish accent, and they patted me and put big sweaters on me and all of that. So that was really nothing like me. I was the younger brother, and so I didn't know what it was like to have an older sister. Even those couple of small scenes. The idea, and then I played a billionaire on a show, and I don't know what that's like at all either. So, but other times I've played guys who come from the city. There was a play I did that I believe it was the impetus for me really becoming an actor, believing that I could do it finally, because I got good reviews and people seemed to enjoy it, and I got work from it and all of that. So. The play was Orphans, wonderful play by Lyle Kessler. It was a hit on Broadway. The West End of London became a movie with Matthew Modine and Kevin Anderson and Albert Finney. And I did this audition when I had zero experience, and I walked into this thing with a bunch of people there, and I got the part. I think because naturally I understood what it was like to be alone. Even though they're orphans, and I had a mother, I wasn't around her a lot because she had to work 1 or 2 or 3 jobs sometimes, even, if you count the weekend job she had. And so to be left alone to your own devices and to try to, I guess, navigate your way through life and the things you think about every day. Think about, is it going to be like this the rest of your life? He had to take care of his younger brother. I felt like I had to take care of, in a sense, my younger sister at the time. Even if it was just a thing in my brain, I thought that, that was my responsibility. And I didn't think about much what I wanted to do and what I was going to become. And then I said, well, how can I do that? Do I have to fast forward then into the future and pick something now? Because people said, the only way to get out of the projects is to focus on something really good. That's very difficult. A lot of people going into the war, of course, Vietnam, they're going into the army and all of that. And I was just so confused, and I didn't know what to do. And this character in Orphans, named Treat, he goes after people and robs them with a knife and gets money and feeds his brother, who loves Hellman's mayonnaise for some reason and all of that. And the beauty of this is I think I got the part because I understood inherently early on at least the point of view of that character. Yeah. But in a strange twist, 10 years later, I was accepted into the Actors Studio, which is such a great honor. And I was standing in line for the restroom of all things. I heard someone talking, and I figured out the guy in front of me just might be the author of the play that made me an actor, Lyle Kessler. So I kindly tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, are you Lyle Kessler?" He turned around, he goes, "Yes, I am." And I couldn't believe it. It was like a Mack truck just ran me right over. I said, I can't believe I'm standing right in front of you, or in this case, behind you, literally. But your play helped me decide that I could be an actor. I always wanted to be, but being able to do it and being accepted into that group, into that society of actors and other people who enjoyed the play and said how much they enjoyed the performance and everything else, that I understood it. Your play brought me here right now. And it's a wonderful thing to be a part of the studio, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And it's not easy to get into, and you're among the best people there who really care about the business and all. And I learned so much being there, and I'm grateful to them. But Lyle Kessler, just that moment right there, made it almost seem like it was fate tying things together. Although I'm not a fatalist, but just something special, I guess, happens when you pursue that path that you can't deny anyway. So just let it go. I think they call it the flow of life, the chi, right? The flow of the river.
Yeah.
Just to follow it and accept it. So there you have it.
That's awesome, though, and the fact, and I do think, you know, in life, in the universe, we throw out. It's like a boomerang, and I definitely think that your situation is that I grew up with my father left when I was young too, and I had two brothers, and I'm a single mom myself. So, life, when we're young, we're very impressionable, and so you took that and identified with the orphan, even though you weren't exactly an orphan. You kind of were alone a lot, and then you look after each other, like, so you could. That was a perfect part for you, and that could, maybe that helps you understand and heal too, because I'm sure being alone a lot when you're younger, it can cause pain for some children, you know, I think, or a sense of loss or abandonment, and if there's something that can help us heal from that, I think it's welcoming.
I think it was very healing, trying to do that part and trying to understand it from the inside, you know, different, but like, wow, other people have gone through similar things, and this is how it is, and this is how you get through that. It was a wonderful journey, and it continues to this day, thankfully.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. How has music influenced your life personally?
There are certain things you learn when you travel the world, like I was lucky enough to do on that show, that
The
that
Booze
you know is
Traveller.
the universal language, if you will. And one of them is sense of humor, of course.
Yes.
A sense of community also. When people get together, you just find out ways to communicate, of course. And also music. Everywhere, people know the same songs. And I remember I was, I don't know, I guess 11-ish or something like that. And I had a crush on this girl, Donna. And I didn't see her much because on the rare occasion I'd go visit my cousins, my father, absentee father, of course, who
Yeah.
divorced, my mother and father divorced when I was 1. A couple of times a year or whenever it was, I don't know, on a good time, maybe a couple of times a month, but he'd bring me to my cousins.
Where was
And
your
that's,
cousins? I know you're in Massachusetts.
yes, I grew up in South Boston. They lived in Somerville.
Oh.
And so this girl, Donna, I had such a crush on. I just thought she was the cutest thing in the world. And I was shy to talk to her. And we were playing stickball out back in this particular moment, which is odd because mostly it was hockey, street hockey, of course. And she came down the stairs and I just was gaga. And on the way home, I heard this song and I said, "Oh my goodness, this is the story of me and Donna." And it was, but I swear to you, on a stack of
So
Bibles,
sweet.
I just heard this song today on the way over here, which is probably why I remember this story.
And can you
It
share the
was
song?
"My Eyes Adored You" by Frankie Valli.
Oh.
And it's, although I never laid a hand on you, my eyes adored you. From afar, I adored you. And You were fifth grade. I was sixth when we came to be. And that's right. I was in the sixth grade and she was in
Oh,
the fifth. And I fantasized about working my fingers to the bone to make it myself a name and all of this stuff. Of course, the rest of it was a little over my head because I was a little kid. But I thought this was it. So I took my shoe shine money and I asked my mother to drive me around to record stores so I could buy the 45 record of this and just play it while I dreamt about this Donna. And
oh,
it's things like that. I think that music really just strums those strings inside of us that
hmm,
bring out all kinds of emotion. I mean, you could hear a song now and remember 40 years ago where you were when you first heard it,
yeah.
or maybe when you heard it where it meant the most to you. I remember I was 12 years old and I just moved to Phoenix from Boston. And of course I had no friends because I just moved there that week. And I met a friend and he said, hey, come over to my house. We'll play basketball. My mother will make us a sandwich, whatever. Great. Sounds good. So we go over there, and his older brothers put on a record. And again, this is back in the days of the records uh, of the Rolling Stones.
Oh,
And
awesome.
they've been one of my favorite bands ever since. Just
Yeah.
all of that. It just resonated. You don't have to intellectualize it. You just feel
Hmm.
something when you listen to music. And I think that's the same for all great art. You don't
Right.
just look at something and intellectualize. It does something to your insides. It strums a chord
Hmm.
that just makes you feel something. And I think music is wonderful art that way.
Music definitely makes memories. They even say that if you play music to a baby in the wombs, they'll hear that and their memory will store that.
That's true, especially Mozart, they say.
Right,
Something
yes,
special
classical.
about that music.
I think when all words are lost, if there's an awkward situation, laughter and music can change your mood, can change your room.
And a
So,
couple of cocktails,
well, yes, of course. you know,
if I may. You can't try to impress others. You'll always be disappointed.
I
Just,
know.
just do for yourself. Figure out the lessons you want to learn in life. Figure out your own true how you want to figure things out, the path you want to be on, not what everyone else is taking. Even I remember when we were acting uh, once, and I was lucky enough to do a play with Al Pacino and a couple other people,
Awesome.
and everybody said, "Oh, that's great. You're just gonna just do what he does." And I said, "What do you mean, just do what he does? He does it that way. That's not. You don't just do what he does. Then it becomes some kind of impersonation or this
Right.
weird fascination that if you're just following someone else's steps, instead of doing what he does, seek out what he sought. How did he start looking at
Hmm.
things? And what was his inspiration? So I got to talk to him a couple of times, and we talked about things. But it's always fascinating to see someone who, at one point, they started out like the rest of us, and they became great. And of course, he's has a boatload of talent. Maybe our greatest living actor, certainly one of them. But it was just great to have that opportunity to. But he is a very individualized person. I mean,
Hmm.
he didn't follow anybody else. He didn't. Maybe he wanted to become someone else, but he's just so unique. And I think
Yeah.
that's the important thing. Not to set out to be unique, but be yourself. You'll be
Yes.
unique enough because there's no one else like you, right?
Similar yet uniquely different. That's my
So,
mantra. How do you feel about what has transpired since COVID-19? And do you ever see us returning to a normality or a new normality?
I wonder what it was like 100 years ago during the Spanish flu, when they had these long masks and people had to get vaccinated and people had to isolate, because that's the closest similarity I could have to this, I suppose. And I would imagine they asked the same question, but the new normal became normal, and no one knows before. Of course, there's no one left over from before that time, I would imagine. And
Yes.
then World War I was right around the corner, and then they had to adjust to the new normal, and World War II. So it'll never be like it was, but I think that's important to know, no matter what happens, whether we have an epidemic or pandemic or not, or a world war or not, it's never going to be like it was. Hence progress, right? To think in that way. It's the good old days aren't really that. Yeah, okay, maybe they were for you, but they're gone. I'd love to be pre-pandemic. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Took so many things for granted. And yes, will it return to normal? Well, what does that mean? Like, how much has the pendulum swung? And of course, it'll go back to whatever extent. I think that once we get it under control, and hopefully we do, that we can put away the mask, that we'll mostly be vaccinated, that we'll have reached herd immunity so that these horribly sad numbers will decline and people will stop dying. And I think a lot of people are dying out of ignorance, not to take a political side, but I think we're being told some really bad information about things. And I've had a couple of friends who absolutely refuse to get vaccinated because they don't have all the information. And again, if you're saying you don't want to get vaccinated, I'm not going to get into the fight with you about it and all of that. But there's a couple of reasons to do so. I think the science and the medicine points to that, and do it for other people. On top of that, because you can carry it and spread it and everything else. And I know people are going to be watching this, yelling at their, he doesn't know what he's talking about and all that. But to me, my friend said, I'll just make it personal and say, my friend said to me, why did you get vaccinated? I said, well, I want to live. And the numbers say if you get vaccinated, you have a better chance to live. Never bringing up politics at all about it. Right. And also, I have a compromised immune system, having had cancer and going through chemo. So I really have to pay attention to that. Yeah. And he would say things like, well, it's not FDA approved. And I'd say, well, neither was the polio vaccine, but it eradicated polio until it became FDA approved. If it ever did, I don't even know that. Well, it was rushed through. But it was tested on thousands of people. And so far, a year after starting the vaccinations, almost a year, I know it's not perfect. Never would I say it's a miracle worker and it's perfect and all that, but it works. So I'm told. And listen, my friend said, if you grow a horn in 5 years off the top of your head, you'll be sorry. Maybe, but I'll be here in 5 years. Right. Again, even the other side of the equation, the political and philosophical side that people are on who don't get vaccinated, that side is even saying, all right, get vaccinated. It's not this horribly intrusive conspiracy to make you get it's free. You get it and you're safe and you're alive. And I think that for those reasons, but also like I said earlier, a sense of community. We want to do it to take care of others too, don't we? And if your answer is no, I don't understand that point of view. I'm not going to shame you or push you off a cliff, but I just don't understand it, to be honest.
Sorry, it made me laugh. Push you off a cliff. That's hilarious. I know. I think what happened was politics happened and they started fighting each other. Media happened and they started fighting each other. No wonder the public were confused. FDA take 2 years in most cases to approve something. That's a standard procedure for the FDA. mRNA has been around for 20 years, and they've been experimenting with the mRNA for 20 years. And politics and media, instead of joining and uniting together, they became into a big fight, and the science got not forgotten but pushed in the background. So people got confused and then fear what they don't know. Fear is a huge way to control people, and so you got one politician saying, or one president saying, don't take the vaccine, another president saying, yes, take the vaccine. So their followers are following suit. So then you have a divided nation, and that's what you're left with. And you're left with fear and then common sense, But that one president got the vaccine after he got COVID. So I don't understand. I mean, if you still don't want to take it, I got the Pfizer.
No, not you personally. I just mean whoever might, might be watching this,
Right.
if you don't, that's up to you. The funny thing is, I'm trying to find analogies when friends call me and say, "Why did you get vaccinated?" Because they haven't, and maybe they're looking for some advice. Maybe
Right.
and I wouldn't want to push anyone into it. Although I'd want them to get it because I believe it's the right move. I believe it's what keeps them and others safe. Because I'd hate to lose friends to a horrible disease like COVID.
Yeah.
But so I was thinking of this last night for the next friend who calls and says, I'm on the fence. What do you think? And, I have many friends who understand this and have talked to me about it. When there is someone in an evacuation zone, when a hurricane or a typhoon is coming or a flood, and they say, I'm not leaving. I'm staying in my house because I grew up here and there's no evidence to say that the flood's going to hit me or the typhoon or the tornado or whatever. Then they have to go get rescued. They're sitting on their roof. Please help. And people use resources and time and endanger themselves to go rescue them.
Right.
They accept that help. They get in the boat or the helicopter.
Right.
These same people, the emergency responders who told them to leave, then they accept that help when it's almost too late. And some of them, of course, you can't get to, and they drown and they get taken away. And my same friends who wouldn't get vaccinated, and I don't have that many of them, thankfully, they would say to those people, they're idiots. Why didn't they just listen to the experts?
Right.
And they wouldn't have had to get rescued after the fact. They wouldn't have had to use up all those resources. Don't they want to live? And so I'd say that's the same thing with this. Listen to the experts so you don't have to get saved later with a tube down your throat, and maybe you don't get saved. Maybe you die. There's all of these stories and videos of people who didn't believe in the vaccine, and then as they're slipping away, as they're dying, they're saying, I'm sorry, I should have got vaccinated. So don't listen to me. Maybe at least if you don't listen to them, think about them. But anyway, that's the analogy I got, that if you want to get rescued, why not before than after,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good analogy. And listen to the science, not the politicians or the media.
I just got my booster shot, actually.
Did
already.
You? That's
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, because I know you went through an awful time with cancer.
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
No, okay. Awful. Well, I'm glad you're.
Which is a blood disease. Yes. You're in the ballpark.
Yes. Well, I'm really glad that you are sitting here today and be able to talk about it.
Yeah, me too.
You're doing okay now, right?
Good as can be.
Oh, well, I hope they.
I feel guilty, actually. I was talking to my oncologist and said, I feel bad that it was so easy. I mean, I really sailed through it. And she said, yeah, it's survivor's remorse, in a sense. A lot of people get that. I sailed through it. I got like starter cancer. It was so easy to get through it, but you have to prepare yourself for that. I welcomed in the chemo. I never said F cancer, and I let it go, do its thing, and then leave my body. I prepared, I put on headphones with quiet, nice, relaxing music. I got myself an eye mask, and I just try to because you have to sit there for 6 hours. And they assured me that wasn't going to work, that, it's still going to be an unpleasant experience. I said, no, I know that. I know it's not a day at the beach. It's not a trip to Disneyland, no doubt. But I'm just going to face it the best way I can and be as positive as I can through it, because I want to get to the other side. And they said, doesn't matter. You're still going to lose your hair. You're still going to get sick. So I bought an adjustable bed because I thought I didn't want to choke on my own vomit in the middle of the night or whatever. Right, because people die that way. We've heard stories, especially famous people for some reason. But I didn't lose any hair at all, and I didn't get sick once. And I think the way you approach something has a lot. It's not everything to do with it, but has a lot to do with how you handle it.
Right. Was there ever? I know this is a personal question. I shouldn't ask this. Was there ever a moment where you thought you weren't going to get through this?
Never.
No.
Never once. From the first diagnosis till 5 seconds before you asked that, I knew I'd get through it. I felt like I would. Even when I did have some symptoms, even when they said it doesn't look good because it's so advanced, you have to come off the road and go through this chemo right now. Even then, I just never felt like I would lose this fight ever. Like you said, and I believe in, never give up. You just can't ever give up. Because once you decide that maybe that's an option, then that becomes an option.
Absolutely. And here you are, living proof that
For now, it's working out so far.
it's going to be good. It's going to be good. You've got
I
this.
think so.
Yeah. Is there anything that no one has asked you in an interview that you would have liked them to ask you? Trick question.
Well, that in itself is a good question, and I've never been asked that question. And I'm sure you've had guests that have funny answers, and I wish I could think of one right now. I could say yes. I wish somebody asked me that question before. No, I guess the reason I don't have an answer to that is when someone is interviewing me or talking to me, or however you want to call this exchange that we do, you don't want to you want to navigate it, of course. You want to have an open and honest back and forth, but you never want it to sound like it's PR. You never want to sound like the questions are fed to the interviewer, because we've seen plenty of those, right? We say, oh, this person is just setting up that person. So you know that it's not really thoughtful conversation. Right. They don't have to reach back into the past for a moment that might be uncomfortable or even painful. That it's just all fluff. And I think that if I had a question that I would want people to ask me, somehow I'd probably work it in, or I'd give it to someone and say, hey, can you ask me this? I wouldn't want to do it that way. I'd want them to come from the person, so we see their point of view too, not just the point of view of the guest. When I'm being a guest, I've also interviewed people. Yes. So I think that I wouldn't want to have an answer to that question, because then you steer it maybe to that and say, maybe she'll ask me this if I give her this and say that, or if I lead her into it. I wouldn't want to do it. It's your show. I'm happy to be a part of it. Ask me anything you want.
Thank you. And you have answered that perfectly, because there's no wrong answers and there's no right answers. And actually, Craig Bierko came on here and he went, what's your bra size? Do you always get called Lisa? That was his answer. It was hilarious.
Craig is funny and a really good actor on top of it.
Yeah, he's great.
When I was doing the show Booze Traveller, we would go to these remote, well, sometimes very big and popular cities, but remote locations, villages, speak to the natives and all. Yeah. And I had this early on tendency to want to know everything about the place, the land, the people, the drink, the food, the history. But thankfully, early enough, I caught myself and said, no, I would want them to tell me. I'll have a cursory knowledge of what's going on maybe, but, I want them to tell me about them. I don't want to say, hey, did you know? They know, they're them. So I would want them to be able to say, this is me, this is our land, this is our history. So I stopped doing that right at the very beginning, so that, like you just said, you want to get to know them through the experience, not because you read a book.
Right.
You could tell your next guest, John Fugelsang,
yes,
that I admire him and his approach to things. Please pass this on to him and his honesty. He had George Harrison on, which might have been one of his last interviews, with the spiritual leader. I forget which one. And John admitted later that because of the format of the show, he was, joking around too much and being too lighthearted. And George was a different kind of cat at that time. Mm-hmm. But John learned from that, and he's just has an excellent point of view and very smart. And the way he debates on Twitter and all of that, I really admire him. But he learned from the George Harrison interview, which oddly enough, I wasn't even thinking about when I was coming to talk to you, but I remember you say you have him next. So please give him my best, if you will.
Jack Maxwell, thank you very much for coming on Chatbox with Sam. It's been an honor to interview you, and I know the audience is going to love this interview. Thank you.
It was a great pleasure to be here, Samantha. Thank you.